Welcome to Halo Ardor, this channel's nomenclature for its Ideas series. Today I will give my thoughts on what an ideal Halo game Sangheili customization should be like. I would like to stress that these ideas are for an essentially utopian Halo game, and that my suggestions are highly unlikely to come true. However, given enough time and resources by Microsoft, I believe the following will be perfect playable Sangheili customization from 343. We're going to start with combat harnesses, otherwise known as armor, which I think is most important for customization. I'll put the timestamps for the other segments and sub-segments of the video in the description. You may not realize it, but there are at least 42 differently designed Sangheili armors that have been revealed to the community. To make this more organized, I'll go game by game for every armor. Again, timestamps will be in the description. Let us start with Halo 2 Anniversary. I'm not using the original because the armors in Anniversary are more canonical, new armors are included, and some actually look a little bit different. Also referred to as combat armor or minor armor, there is not a single other Sangheili harness that has seen as much variation and use as this one. First of all, take a look at how many different designs there are for this single armor. As far as I know, these are all canonical representations of the same armor, just with slight alterations to them. If I had to pick the one that I wanted in Halo Infinite, it would have to either be the Halo 2 Anniversary campaign one or the Halo Reach one. Those are my favorites. Also just called the Ranger Armor, this suit is designed for exo-atmospheric combat in zero or low gravity conditions and uses an anti-gravity pack. This particular Ranger Armor, unlike the one in Halo Reach, which we'll talk about later, does not have an EVA face shield, but instead has some strange, albeit elegant, helmet piece covering where the visor would be. Something to note is the similarities in the helmet structure between this Ranger and the one on Reach. The helmets are practically identical without the headpiece from Halo 2 Anniversary. This armor, bestowed upon only the most skilled and loyal Sangheili, was designed to be a symbol of great honor and privilege. While the red and steel coloring changes throughout the ranks, it is likely that the iconic glowing yellow pieces of the Honor Guard armor stay the same throughout their ranks, and is what displays their pride. These pieces are clearly very ceremonial, as they seem to be considered impractical in battle, as demonstrated by the Honor Guardsmen at the Apex site in Halo Wars, wearing what appears to be the standard combat harness, and using non-ceremonial energy staves. Speaking of the energy staves, the ceremonial variants are obviously supposed to be visually reminiscent of the ceremonial Honor Guard armor utilized by the Covenant Empire. Sometimes, Honor Guards will have standard Covenant vehicles stylized after their ceremonial armor as to fit their aesthetic. Such was the case with the Honor Guard Wraith. There is also a different variant of the ceremonial Honor Guard harness utilized by the Banished, but we'll get to that later. Also called the Artifact Retrieval Harness, or the Heretic Armor, a very ill-fitting name considering the fact that these heretics were actual ranks in the Covenant Empire not long prior to you encountering them in Halo 2. Because of this, I refer to them as gas miners, as they are on the gas mine orbiting Threshold, doing what I believe is collecting fuel for Covenant ships contained in these mysterious storage tanks that can be found throughout the gas mine. This would explain why they would be so unprepared for combat, because combat likely wasn't their objective, hence why they have limited armor including no helmet. They have a breathing apparatus to help them breathe in this hazardous gaseous environment. Something to note are the 4 fin-like pieces sticking out at the back of their armor. These fins aren't too dissimilar to the armors adorned by the members of Rupa Moromi's clan, which we will talk about very late into the video. Also, the Type 26AZ and Type 26BZ ground support aircraft, or the Banshees utilized by the gas miners, are stripped of their Covenant manufactured cowlings, revealing the Forerunner technology beneath. This was done to make the Banshees resemble not only Sanghelios, but also likely the armor adorned by the various ranks of the gas miners. There's not really too much to say here. The armor of the Counselors is not only supplied with abundant shielding, but is also very durable, as you would expect when the lives of such high politicians are at stake. As is common with many Sangheili harnesses, the helmet is fairly sizable as to represent the Sangheli's importance, covering most of their face and stretching out far behind the head. Something to note is the similarity this has with the designs of the Halo Reach Ultra helmet and Netva Liege helmet, another 2 armors we will get to eventually. Wearing Arbiter armor into battle alongside the modern Sangheili harnesses is like a medieval knight fighting alongside the UNSC. Prior to the Great Schism, this armor was seriously outdated. It lacked mandible guards, it had extremely limited active camouflage technology, and it was somewhat lacking in proper armor due to its ceremonial and obsolete nature. It possesses several variations that we will look at eventually as well. This is not including the precise variants that are intended to fit the bodies of each individual Arbiter. This harness includes a host of sensor enhancements and exotic structural composites which improve survivability and effectiveness during high-threat combat and isolated surveillance excursions on frontier worlds. This harness originated from Sangheili ceremonial armor equipped by hunting lodges. In recent history, Sangheili artisans on remote colonies have modernized the armor to use for hunting down Jirohanai raiding packs. We are now finished with Halo 2 Anniversary. Time to move on to Halo 3, which is a little bit shorter. We already reviewed the standard combat harness, so I won't go over that again. Instead, we'll start with Commando. The Commando harness is a lighter and sturdier counterpart to the standard issue combat harness. The helmet features hardened communication gear and uplink capabilities, and the thoracic cage is streamlined for greater maneuverability in close environments. Lightweight construction materials and advanced internal components increase overall performance, making the wearer more deadly in combat. The Assault Harness is a reissued pre-Covenant Sangheili harness that features reinforced aligned composites and buttress principal protective stratum to preserve structural coherence of underlying tissue, and ultra-resilient deltoid protection to aid in concussive shock force and direct kinetic energy. Much like the standard combat harness, it is also designed to be intimidating and damage the enemy's psyche and morale. The armor was restricted from use when the Sangheili joined the Covenant due to its startling effectiveness, and remained in use only in limited quantity. The Assault Harness shares a distant origin with some variants of the Ranger Harness, though both are now different armor systems. While structurally similar to the Assault Harness, the helmet of the Flight Harness features a hyper-wavelength for cleaner craft interactions and a mouthpiece that retains a multiport for use with older Terrace-class heavy fighters and Gigas-class fighter bombers. The more compact deltoid armor has less of an impact on the elite's range of motion in the cramped compartments of subliminal spacecraft and reduces overall fatigue in multi-phase interdiction missions. The less cumbersome cage utilizes aligned composites to postpone the onset of fatigue, and the explicit primary environment multiport is less restrictive than older helmet multiport. The helmet on this appears to be completely sealed. Two yellowish-orange bulbs mark the location of the wearer's eyes. If you look closely enough, you can see the slight bulges where the jaws are. Along the jawline, and for about 15 centimeters or 6 inches beyond, extend two silvery tusk-like protrusions similar in design to those found on stealth brute headpieces. These tusks also look strikingly similar to a brute's spiker blades. Judging by the description offered in-game, the helmet-mounted blades are likely meant to further augment the wearer's already frightening appearance. Another thing to relate it to are the rounded tusks of the Executioner's helmet from Halo Wars 2, but we'll get to that soon enough. The helmet also comes with a white, flexible neckpiece. After the outbreak of the Great Schism, Thelvedam gave the Arbiter body armor a much-needed update. It now had permanent active camouflage, a flashlight, mandible guards, and overall just more armor. By the way, Grimbrother 1 confirmed in the 100 cannon fodder that the Arbiter's armor in Halo 3 was actually silver, just like in Halo 2, but Halo 3's weird lighting made it appear golden. But that's irrelevant to this video. That does it for Halo 3. Up next is Halo Reach, which once again has another variation of the standard combat harness that I will not talk about. Officers wear more ornamental armor, which functions with no substantial differences to Sangheili equipped with the standard combat harness. The officer harness features much more pronounced shoulder pauldrons and a more elaborate helmet with a backward swept spike in the center. Also important to note is how the officer armor looks like a cross between the minor armor and the ultra armor, taking inspiration from both helmets, which is a similar concept to how the Revenant crosses both the Ghost and the Wraith. One of my personal favorite Sangheili armors, the ornate Ultra armor from Halo Reach follows the trend the High Counselors follow as well. Larger helmet means more important individual. It also shares the same energy sword design that many Sangheili helmets share, such as Let Valir's helmet or the Officer helmet. Also known as the Infiltration Harness, or the Infiltrator Harness, this harness seems to be the set standard for almost all ranks of the Special Warfare group of the Covenant Empire. It was adorned by Stealth Sangheili, regular Spec-Ops Sangheili, and I presume it would have been worn by Atas Vadum's group if 343 had more time to make it so. I say this because while the Spec-Ops and the Stealth Sangheili wore the Spec-Ops armor in Halo CE Anniversary, the armor seemed to be notably absent in Halo 2 Anniversary, and I assume this was due to time constraints. The Infiltration Harness is a set that has embedded active camouflage technology. This ensures the user can turn invisible if required without the need for external modules. If the user has energy shields, once its shields have been lowered, the harness cannot cloak its wearer until the shields have recharged. Compared to the standard combat harness, this harness is sleeker and covers the whole body. The helmet covers the head and ends downwards with a large curved projection. A modified variant of this armor exists for the subcategory of special operations known as a Silent Shadow, which we'll talk about later as well. One main difference between this Ranger and the Halo 2 Anniversary one is the type of jetpack it uses. Instead of the anti-gravity pack, this Ranger uses a chemical-based thruster pack for propulsion similar to the portable jump jet that some ODST units use. Another difference is the helmet. While they have the same shaped helmets, the Reach Ranger has its entire visor exposed. This armor also works in zero or low gravity environments, but also has been known to participate in ground engagements. Sangheili generals were heavily augmented ornate armor with large curved command helmets, again displaying the tradition of bigger helmets, and somewhat bulky angular chests and shoulder pieces. Ornamental glowing patterns run along the command helmet, shoulder pauldrons, and cuirasses. The armor provides both good protection and decent mobility. Also called the Reach Zealot armor, or just the Zealot armor, this seems to be the standard set of armor for many Zealot ranks both during and after the Human Covenant War. This harness features a smooth, organic thoracic cage harness, large sloping shoulder pauldrons, and a long back-swept helmet with mandible guards. The helmet and pauldrons feature decorative blue bands. It bears a heavy resemblance to the Field Marshal armor that I will start talking about now. The Field Marshal armor is incredibly similar to the Reach's Zealot armor, which makes sense considering the fact that they are the leaders of the Zealot teams we see throughout Halo Reach's campaign. However, they have these horns coming out of their helmet as well to help set it apart. They also seem to have the shoulders of the generals that we looked at earlier. Now on to 343's games. When it comes to Halo 4 and 5, Halo 5 has every Sangheili armor that Halo 4 has and more, so I'm just going to skip Halo 4 and go straight to Halo 5. This harness is simple, sleek, and efficient. The helmet covers the full span of the face, offering some protection to it. The harness also has form-fitting greaves so they can fit comfortably for the user. Unlike the combat harness where the armor covers the whole body, storm armor often leaves its wearer's arms exposed. This is not the case for the storm harness in use in the Swords of Sanghelios, which has a red undersuit and armor covering the arms. Sangheili Commander armor can be described as a more sophisticated set of the Sangheili Storm armor, with both sporting the same lower body armor and chest harnesses. Commanders, on the other hand, wear more angular shoulder pads, wrist guards, a smooth bodysuit, and a much more ornate helmet. Commander armor appears similar to the suits worn by Sangheili officers from the original Covenant in terms of design, with a spike in the center going backwards, but its helmet is very large, much like the Ultras. The raised claw on their boots is reminiscent of ancient ceremonial armor. After spending several centuries creating parts for other Sangheili harnesses, Lodam Armory pooled their efforts and made this variant based on the first fully in-house armor system, the Storm Harness. This harness is also marginally heavier than the Storm Harness it was based on. This version is lightly armored and has a mesh suit that is protected by energy shielding. The boots can magnetically latch if necessary. This version also has a forward limb and a hind limb thrust control to help keep the user from losing control of their body. The thruster packs that this suit uses are gravity mitigating. This armor is able to be used in space, radioactive sites, and other hazardous locations. There is also a second version of the suit with more layers. The warrior armor, especially the helmet, is quite similar in appearance to the armor adorned by Sangheili generals in service to the Covenant. However, it leaves the wearer's forearms exposed. The helmet is an elaborate, accentuated design. The pauldrons use a shield bolstering pauldron system to increase shield strength. The cuirass is of the spaded design. The greaves are high-framed and are ridge-locked, with ornamental raised claws just like the commander armor. This is another armor type derived from traditional designs worn on Hesderos. This style was in use as early as 2526, though the prevalence of its issue relative to other wartime models is unclear. It is commonly worn by zealots serving various remnant factions in the wake of the Covenant's collapse, most notably the body led by Julum Dama, which was formed on Hesderos. The suit has a very organic, almost chitinous appearance, reflecting its origin on Hesderos. The helmet, which encompasses most of the wearer's face, vaguely resembles those worn by the Ascetics and Covenant Special Operations Forces. A cross-shaped pattern of insets faces outward from a central point on the helmet. A blade-like talon, derived from the armor worn by Guidance on Hesderos, is located on the inner toe of either boot. This harness also has protective hand armor and raised foil arcs on its back. Like the infiltration harness worn by Special Operations and Sangheili, this armor is equipped with active camouflage. As the leader of the Reformed Covenant, Ndama wore armor commonly used by zealots of the New Covenant Order. However, it was painted blue, similar to the coloration worn by less experienced Sangheili soldiers. His armor differentiated from the standard Hesderos zealot armor due to the holographic symbol that hovers over the forehead of his helmet and the multiple painted white handprints with Didact's unbound symbols on the palm, indicating his status as the Didact's hand. This armor was custom built for Thalbadon once he became Kain because it was time he disposed of the traditional Arbiter armor since it was bestowed onto him by the manipulative prophets. However, his armor was designed to pay homage to the Arbiter days by sharing certain characteristics with it, such as with his right shoulder being significantly larger than his non-existent left. It also symbolized his newfound role as leader of his people. That's it for Halo 5. Now it's time to move on to some of my favorite armors, the ones from Halo Wars 2. No title, rank, or name has been revealed about the Sangheili ordered to execute Atriox besides the Executioner. As such, I cannot label his armor with any name besides that. His helmet is somewhat reminiscent of the Ascetic helmet from Halo 3, with the tusks and such. However, he is more likely tied to some division of Spec-Ops Sangheili, as those are what are seen surrounding him at Atriox's attempted execution in the Halo Wars 2 cutscene, even though Rise of Atriox establishes that their true appearance is actually the same as the Executioner's, but without the tusks. I suppose that makes this 42 total different armors. To further this Spec-Ops argument, he is also wielding a Bloodblade, an energy sword variant usually reserved for special forces among the Covenant. The last thing you should note is that this Executioner, Let'Vulir, and the standard Banished armor all have the exact same armor besides the helmet. This was likely due to time and resource constraints, but is also most likely canon because of it. Again, no name, title, or rank has been associated with this armor. As such, I had to give it my own custom name that I saw as the most appropriate. This is a theme you are going to see a lot for the rest of the armor segment of this video. As previously stated, everything about this armor is exactly the same as the Executioner's except for the helmet. It's all very round and relatively simply designed. The helmet, however, seems to have the same rounded off forehead that the Storm harness bears, the same concept as the standard combat harness, and the slit at the back that's similar to the officer's armor. Let'Vulir's helmet is very similar in design to both the Ultra armor and the Council armor, and also follows the theme of bigger, more ornate helmets for higher positions. The Honor Guards in the Banished wear armor nearly identical to the ceremonial armor adorned by the Honor Guards within the Covenant Empire. One of the main two differences is that the ceremonial yellow glowing light pieces on their armor have been turned into a stone gray color, with no pattern on them at all. The other main difference is that the gray armor on the arms, instead of jutting out into two curved pieces like on the Covenant Honor Guards, actually stays as one piece that is more angular and straight. Well, that does it for all the armors that we see in the games. However, out of the 44 or so armors that I am discussing today, 11 of them actually show up in media outside of the games. So, this section of the armor segment of this video will be dubbed All Armors Revealed to the Community, but not put into the games. Considering that most Supreme Commanders seem to adorn golden armor, and also since the helmet of Loro Ta'alumi, the Supreme Commander of the Covenant's Third Fleet of Glorious Consequence, is very similar to Ro Baratami's helmet, I assume that Ro's armor is the standard armor for Supreme Commanders within the Covenant Empire. I could be mistaken, but that's just my theory. His armor is quite standard around the legs, chest, and arms, nothing particularly noteworthy. However, his helmet has these 3 struts coming out of the back of it that helps set his armor apart. He also has a purple cape that is standard among high-ranking fleet commanders. It would be preferable to have this cape in-game, but if 343 doesn't include it, it's really not an issue. The Imperial Admiral armor, being for such an outstandingly high rank, is extremely intricate in design. It is smothered in golden Forerunner glyphs, much like most Arbiter armor. The headdress,
just like so many other armors meant for high-ranking individuals, is gigantic and very complex in design, having pieces of the helmet wrap around the centerpiece, giving a very ornate, almost galactic appearance. The shoulder pads are so large that they cover part of his chest. Barely any skin shows. There is also a strange blue glow in the eyes of Citan, and just like the Supreme Commander, he adorns a purple cape. Whether or not 343 includes these in-game wouldn't matter to me, though, like I said, the cape would be preferable to have. However, if 343 were to include the cape and glowing eyes, I would want there to be an option to turn them off. Until the very last 3 armors, every remaining armor is going to be named after the individual wearing it, as their specific armor is not seen on anyone else. Vivon Sarom is one of the many legendary warriors of the Covenant, much like Atriox or Zaitan. As such, this armor may have been made chiefly for him. While the helmet is a completely original design, the armor tends to share some characteristics with the flight harness from Halo 3, particularly with the arrows in the center of the torso. This is somewhat similar to the Imperial Admiral armor, with some of the helmet wrapping around behind itself, but it still has more of a take from the armors fashioned by the members of Ju'Um Dala's Covenant. Being a mercenary, Vada Gijat did not follow many Sangheili traditions. As such, his armor was less than standard, being completely asymmetrical and unorthodox, looking very mechanical. Most of his body did not have armor, exposing a majority of his undersuit. Harka, and yes, it is Harka. Watch the Halo Legends closing credits cut and you'll see in the subtitles that the Prophet does indeed call him Harka. You might want to fix that, Halopedia. I digress. Harka wears a very samurai-esque armor. You can see a lot of similarities. I originally thought that maybe his armor wasn't canon because it might have been so Japanese due to the animators being Japanese. However, in 2014, the Halo 2 Anniversary Terminal Monitor Report Unequal Union showed him wearing that same armor, albeit with glowing eyes much like Zaitan Jar Ratimri. So I suppose it is canon after all. This is the last armor I named after a specific Sangheili. However, it's not named after the first name of a Sangheili, but rather an entire bloodline. This is the Kaiden armor for the bloodline of Ripa Mormi, the 17th Arbiter in the line of Immaculate Succession. His bloodline seems to adorn the same fins that we saw the gas miners fashioning at the beginning of this video. However, these are likely purely aesthetical. The Kaiden also has these struts jutting out of the top of his helmet, which is frequently seen in armor made for leaders. It also seems that the regular members of the clan have unique armor as well, with smaller fins and no struts in their helmets. So perhaps we can make that 44 total different armors. As far as I am aware, the only time this armor has ever appeared in Halo media was in Halo Legends: The Babysitter. The way the armor is layered is very Japanese. Taking these two facts into account, one could assume that it's probably not canon, though I do hope otherwise. It's very standard armor. Its most distinct feature is the way the armor is layered, looking very Japanese. This is a modified variant of the infiltration harness we mentioned in the Halo Reach section. It likely has many prototypical enhancements due to it being bestowed to only a few squads of the most elite of the Sangheili Special Operations branch. This, along with a few other armors, will be talked about again in the next segment of the video. Virtually everything about this armor is exactly the same as the Halo Reach Ranger armor, that is, besides the helmet. The visor is more akin to that of the Silent Shadow, rather than the EVA style visor of the other Rangers. Additionally, the chin of the helmet seems to have some sort of spike protruding from it. This final Arbiter armor variant was designed for operations in hazardous environments and mobility in low to zero gravity. It's likely very similar to the assault-based Ranger harness without a face shield, due to them utilizing the same type of jetpack, the anti-gravity pack. It also seems to have flashlights built into its armor. Due to the Ranger-like qualities of this armor, it's likely that it doesn't possess any active camouflage technology like the contemporary Arbiter armor we see in-game. We're finally finished with the first, and longest, segment of the video, the armor. Now, I want to talk about visors. As always, timestamps for the final two segments of the video are in the description. So, this is an idea that has never been implemented into a Halo game. This idea is the ability for Sangheili to be able to change visor colors. You may think, well, what's the point of that? Well, what's the point of the option being available for Spartans? It's all cosmetic, and to offer more variety to the game. In fact, the option may matter more for Sangheili than it does for Spartans. Allow me to explain. The Silent Shadow hasn't really had many ranks revealed to the community. However, we do know of at least 2, and this is where Visors come in. The only named rank that has been revealed is the First Blade Officer, which seems to be the rank of the leader of each individual Silent Shadow squad. Their visors are red, which is the only distinguishable feature from the lower implied rank of the Silent Shadow, which has a blue visor. In this case, Visor Color is very important, otherwise there would be no way to tell these 2 ranks apart. There are other armors as well that seem to adorn a visor. The various ranger armors all seem to. However, when it comes to the rest of the Sangheili armors, a lot of them that don't just expose the eye have either the eye slits, like the one seen on Spec-Ops or Ultra armors, or big bulbs like on the Ascetic or Assault armors. Just like with the Gungnir helmet in Halo Reach, changing the visor color should change the color of even these tiny eye slits and bulbs. That's it for the visor section. Up next is the armor configuration. What I mean by this is how interchangeable the armor sets are. So, what I'm asking for in this section is the ability to interchange the armor sets the way you could in Halo 3, such as having the Ascetic helmet with a flight chestplate and Assault shoulders. This feature was notably absent in Halo Reach for Playable Sangheili, and notably limited the customization and uniqueness. Spartan still had it, but Sangheili only had armor sets. If this took too much time for 343 though, then whatever. If I had to choose between the variety of armor from the first segment of the video and the Halo 3 armor configuration abilities, I would definitely choose the variety of armor from the first segment. I hope to have both though. That does it for armor configuration abilities. Now onto the final segment of this extensive video, Phenotype. This is something we have never, ever seen in a Halo game before, not even among Spartans, for obvious reasons. At least changing visor colors is something we've seen on Spartans, but this idea is entirely new. This would be for an absolutely perfect Halo game that already has the previous 3 segments as options in it, as I would choose the previous 3 segments before I would choose this one. Not that I don't like this idea. So basically, this idea is the ability to change your Sangheili's phenotype. This would require a lot of time and resources, and it is a very unrealistic dream. I'm not going to go over the anatomy or history or anything for these phenotypes today, as I did that in its own separate video. So basically, the main 5 phenotypes I know of, because there may be more that I'm missing, who knows, are the ones introduced by Blur Studios appearing in both Halo 2 Anniversary and Halo Wars 2, the one from Halo Reach, which has also made an appearance in Halo CE Anniversary, the one from Halo 4 and 5, which I've taken to calling Historians, the one from Halo Wars and Halo Legends Package, and the one that is probably least known to all of you due to its notable absence in Halo media. I discovered this one on my own, the pale colored one from Halo Legends Origins 1, and the Halo graphic novel Second Sunrise over New Mombasa. That's it. That's all 4 segments of the video. I've put a lot of thought into this for more time than you would probably think, so I'd appreciate any and all comments, criticisms, corrections, and suggestions. If I butchered any of the names of any of the particular Sangheili, let me know. If you find any new armors or really have any suggestions at all for more content to add to this video, or just more content in general, let me know. Farewell.